Hello, fellow bass players. Welcome to the Bass Player University. And today we're going to have a little lesson about harmonics. And in this video, part one, I want to focus on what we call natural harmonics. There are also false harmonics. And there is actually quite a lot to know about them. It's not just about where you place your hands to get the sound of the harmonics, but it's about what note you're actually getting. And potentially a little bit about the why, which is potentially more in depth than we need right now, but that's okay. Why don't we at least get over the technique before we talk about anything else? So when you do a natural harmonic, the goal is that you barely touch the string, just enough so that you prevent the string from vibrating too much. You can actually get it in different ways, but let's just talk about this for the moment, right? Let's say we have our D string. Let's say I want to hear one octave higher. I'm going to actually take the halfway point of the string, which is the 12th fret, and I'm going to use what's called a node. You create the node by doing exactly what I was saying before. You barely touch the string. I'm not pushing. As you can see, I'm barely touching. And now, when I pluck, I get a harmonic. Here's open D. Here's the harmonic. Now, if I cut that in half, I get a fifth. And then if I cut that in less than half, I get an octave. These notes in these octaves exist right here on the fretboard. But what's really interesting is you can play many octaves in one position, an entire scale. But that's a false harmonic, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Listen to these notes. It's exactly what I just played, all on one string. One of the more interesting features of the harmonics is that once you hit that halfway point at 12, once you get the octave above the open string, which is actually called the fundamental in this case, and a more detailed description will save that. What I want to do is get you playing harmonics as quickly as possible. When you spread out from the center, the notes go in both directions. Normally, when I head this way, the notes go down. But with harmonics, they're actually going up, and they keep going up into what we hear as what's called the dominant seventh chord. Each one of these notes is actually available here now. And in this scenario, in this D dominant seventh chord, we get D, F sharp, A, C, and then another D for the octave. Now just that alone we can talk about for a few hours, I would say. But that's the beauty of the harmonics. You can get not only notes that you can achieve in different areas of the fingerboard all in one small area, but now we're getting octaves that are higher than what we would get on our actual limits of the fretboard. So before we even talk about any notes beyond what we already did, let's dive a little deeper into the best way to get these harmonics and how we can actually use them in a bass setting. Because this note here, I would say maybe not fit for a bass line, right? At the Bass Player University, we often get into as much detail as possible about your role as a bass player and what part of the fretboard you use, what string you use has a major factor, what octave you choose, how you pluck and where you pluck, your tone knobs, your volume even. All of these things are humongous factors into what makes a great bass player, what makes a good bass line into a great bass line. There's always elements of natural feel and all this other stuff, and I make sure to cultivate that from every student. Well, every student I've ever had for the past over 25 years. But now in the group setting at the university, when it comes to a topic like this, I think everyone can learn faster. Everyone can experiment at the same time, say, oh, how did you do that? Where did you put your finger here? So, what's the best way to get the sound? Right now, I have my tone settings boosted for mids a good amount, boosted for highs a decent amount, not as much as the mids. My lows, I put them a little bit behind, I cut them a little bit. And I placed my pickup selector with a focus to the back pickup. The back pickup catches harmonics much better than the front pickup. The front pickup is there for body, strength, and sustain. Picture reggae. Reggae bass lines are front pickup. Well, not all the way, but definitely won't hurt if it is all the way. A little more subterranean, more lows, less highs, if any. Now, the back pickup, we get something more of what's usually called burpy tone, something more of a tight funk tone, something more like Jaco. And you can achieve these things by plucking in different places too, but if you have a pickup selector like I do, my pickup selector is just a knob that I can go back and forth. You hear that center part. When I'm in the center, I got both pickups. When I go towards the back, I accentuate the back pickup. When we get the string back here, it's tighter than it is over here. I can wiggle the string much stronger here, much more easily here than here. The overtones live there. And if you pluck there, you'll probably get a better better harmonic sound, but you can pluck pretty much anywhere and get these harmonics, as you can see, with the extra string noise for fun. Now, that is one of the things with this kind of tonal setting. You're going to get a lot of string noise. And speaking of Jaco, if Jaco brought you to the world of harmonics, which a lot of us found that to be 100% right, he had a recorded Portrait of Tracy, which is really just a harmonic masterwork, all kinds of natural and false harmonics all over the place, while playing notes at the same time. You can do that. If I play the note D, I can get a full D major sounding chord here. So it's a very effective way to get all kinds of chordal approaches. And the beauty of it, the more you know how to spell chords, for example, D, F sharp, A is a D major triad. B, D, F sharp, that is a B minor triad. They both have D and F sharp. And these harmonics right here are F sharp and D. So I can play a B now. Now it's minor. And there's much higher ones as well. And that's a whole different world. Getting into the upper reaches here, you really have to be very, very accurate and pluck very particularly to get this right. But at least for now, you can experiment. And the best place to experiment is 12, 7, 5, the front edge of 4 where you would normally actually fret, the back edge of 4 before the fret ends, the front middle of 3, and the back middle of 3. This is where a good amount of the usable natural harmonics live. So you can do this on all your strings. You can combine them. Get all kinds of sounds. Jaco did this in his song, like I said, Portrait of Tracy. You'll notice that I'm trying to mute so I don't get all this different sounds, because you can essentially get a B minor scale if you do it right within there, and that's a whole different. We can get into the details eventually. But Jaco made sure that he threw in one tricky big stretch needed, and I am a very flexible person, so it's not bad for me. Some people may have trouble finding this. This is a false harmonic. Now I'm not using the open string, not just touching lightly. Now I have to actually fret this note B, and I'm doing the node lightly touching here, lightly. I'm not pressing, I'm lightly touching. And I get that note, D sharp. So there's a whole world with the false harmonics, and I think we're going to save that for part 2 here. So I hope this video gave you some good ideas about how to approach false harmonics. We didn't go into the musical acoustics of the whys and how it all works, but at least you understand that when you play an open string, you get the fundamental, and then we approach what's called the overtone series. All of the different notes that we find through our nodes when we barely touch, all of these things are what make up the actual note. These are all inside of D. When you play it, you get these notes. That's why you can actually pluck and just touch. I actually stopped the string from vibrating enough to catch the note. That note has been there all along. The note has been there all along. They're all inside of the orbit. When you pluck a string, you get an orbit. As long as you pluck it appropriately. If you do this, you're not going to get an orbit when you pluck it that way. But when you pluck, you get an orbit. If you stop it, you get a harmonic in certain places. So, again, I hope that this gave you something to think about, something to mess with if you've never tried them before. Have fun. Just play them anywhere. See what happens. If you don't know the notes yet that well, if you don't understand how to spell triads, seventh chords, if you don't even know what a seventh chord is, that's what the Bass Player University is for. We go into detail about all of the things that we need to know, from fundamental to funk master. And not every bass line has to be funky. I think I'm quoting Michael Manring there in a really old Bass Player magazine interview. And it's very true. There's a lot of different ways to be a bass player. And natural harmonics are a great way to add texture to a song without having to play 2 actual notes, which can really be very big and surprising sounding almost to the listener. It interrupts things sometimes. You'd be stepping on somebody's toes like the singer. We don't want that. So keep this in mind. As you're learning, there's a lot more to be learned. There always is. I'm still learning. Everyone's still learning. And at the Bass Player University, you get to learn in a group environment. You get a syllabus for the month. You get a test at the end of that month, a fun test, by the way. You get weekly, let's call them assessments. After all the topics that we discuss, it's 1 hour one day, another hour another day. At the end of the week, I give you a weekly assessment, and I show you with scores, with paragraphs of information, what you did great and what you have to work on. So that way you know where you are and that your growth is guaranteed. And after teaching for this long, for over 25 years, I'm finding it to be a much more rewarding experience than the one-on-one lessons alone. And I still offer one-on-one lessons, of course, but I hope that at the very least you can see what I'm all about through the videos I'm going to provide on YouTube. So I hope to see you in part 2, where we discuss false harmonics. And thank you so much for joining me here. All the information, my website, and everything else, the link will be in the show notes as always. I'll see you next time.